Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube. Today I want to talk about Burns Place as part of Gosford History series. So Burns Place is a small park located on Man Street opposite Gosford train station. It was initially a piece of land set aside by James Kibble, who in the 1890s was on the local council and became the Shire president. He has Kibble Park named after him, and was responsible for improving the town's sanitation by introducing the pan system, which did away with the pit system. So there's a picture of Burns Place today. Scroll down a little bit. Okay. So the pit system, we'll talk about this. It was used in the 20th century as a sanitary technology consisting of a hole in the ground. Most people are probably quite familiar with that, especially if you've been camping or living off-grid. And the pan system included the use of removable sanitary pans, also known as night soil pans, pail closets, and dunny cans, which were part of the Australian culture before the introduction of sewerage systems. The dunny man would collect the pans once a week and empty them into sewer lines. Night soil pans were used in Melbourne suburbs before the construction of the city's underground sewerage system in the 1890s and early 1900s. Which was about the time that I'm talking about in Gosford. They were used as an alternative to septic tanks or as temporary toilets. Pail closets were replaced by flush toilets in the Western world due to improved water supplies and sewage systems. The invention of the flush toilet was actually in 1592 by Sir John Harrington. The dunny cans would have looked like this one pictured at Surrey Hills before the sewage systems. People usually had an outside toilet. The toilet seat was made of a plank of wood secured at each end to the walls of the building with a large round hole in the middle. This is just a picture of pans that were used at the time. And another advertisement for pans. So a welcome breakthrough for householders, and presumably the dunny man as well, came with the introduction of the two-pan system. With one pan can, the contents were tipped into an open cart and the dirty can returned to the toilet. With the two-pan system, the dirty can and its contents were replaced by a fresh can that had been steam cleaned since the last use. The full cans were taken away in a sealed cart or wagon with a roof and doors. The night soil was buried in trenches. As in Queensland, the residents took to the council to have the practice stopped, and which the council came up with putting the waste on a barge, towing it out to Moreton Bay and dumping it into the sea. So I'm not sure where it went from Gosford, whether it was buried or put to sea, but I have heard of the waste going out to sea. Life expectancy in the 1880s in Australia was below 50 years of age. The average was dragged down by a high rate of infant deaths. Over 10% of babies born did not reach 1 year old. 30% of all deaths were children under 2 years of age. Life expectancy rose steadily through the 20th century due to a host of factors, including advances in medicine and improvements in personal hygiene. But so too did the humble dunny cart and the double pan system contribute to better health and the virtual eradication of the dreaded typhoid fever. The dunny man, or more politely night man, was a very important and necessary vocation. This is a picture of a dunny cart which belonged to Robert Hunter, who won his first sanitation contracts in Sydney 1912. Hunter Brothers eventually had sanitation contracts in towns throughout New South Wales and Queensland. So Burns Park in Gosford may have been the place on which sanitary amenities were located conveniently for the railway station and town hub, as there is a toilet situated there today next to the information centre. I'm not sure why the park became named Burns Place. However, I did find a man named Burns who lived prominently in Gosford during the time of Mr. Kibble, and who could be the Burns of Burns Park. So Forrest Douglas Burns was born in 1873 in Maitland, New South Wales, Australia. He arrived at Gosford in 1882 and later opened a bakery and general store, which he afterwards sold to Frederick Cox in 1909. Forrest Douglas Burns passed away 16th of July 1951 at Gosford Hospital. The obituary in the Gosford Times and Wyong District Advocate 1906 to 1954 on 17th of July 1951 read, Forrest Douglas Burns, the death of Mr. Forrest Douglas Burns, principal of F.D. Burns Pty Ltd, General Storekeepers, Arimba, occurred in the Gosford District Hospital yesterday. He leaves a widow, Ella. The late Mr. Burns was a councillor for sea riding in the Erina Shire Council in the 1920s. Mr. R. H. Crichton will conduct the funeral to the Northern Suburbs Crematorium this afternoon. The Reverend A. Cleghorn held a service in the Presbyterian Church, Gosford, last night. So this is a picture of Man Street, Gosford, around the 1900s. And looks like it says W. Burns, so it could be a relation of the Forrest Burns. Through the mid-late 19th century, development in the township of Gosford and surrounding areas intensified, spurred by the establishment of the Great Northern Railway in the late 1880s. By 1887, the railway line was open and operational from Newcastle to Gosford, and the township of Gosford was well established. The areas of public recreation as well as commercial and residential development sprawling on a grid pattern. The development of the railway boosted the region's economy through the creation of jobs in the supply of materials and labour for the rail construction. The railway also served to shorten the distance between Sydney and Brisbane Waters region, creating a new market for farmers and new opportunities for city folk seeking a weekend away from the bustle of the city. So early town map of Gosford, where this is Brisbane Water, this is the railway line and the station, heading north. And Burns Park is just this side of Gosford, of the railway station. Yeah, it's kind of hard to make out, but that's the racecourse there. And Man Street, Gosford comes through here, Man Street there. So Burns Park would be located here. Okay. Jeff Morris shares a family story saying, my father was Fred Morris. He was a grocer. He had his own store in Arimba prior to the First World War, but it burnt down, and he went to work for a fellow named Burns, F.T. Burns. He was one of the pioneers of the district, and he worked for him until he was 70. He retired at 70. He worked for one bloke all his life, right through the Depression. I remember during the Depression he worked right through but only got paid every second week, and the fellows that worked for Burns agreed that they would do this to keep the business going. So 2 weeks' work for 1 week's pay. That's right. Yeah, Burns, was he a fair sort of man? Yeah, a gentleman. Old school type of gentleman, very pious old gentleman. But I think he pioneered the district. He did everything. He originally had a bakery. He was a baker and newsagent, almost up to the time that he died. He was one of the few people that, because of his record and his history, he got biscuits direct from Arnott's. This is a little story that mentions F.T. Burns. So that must be the Mr. Burns that I'm guessing is of Burns Park, but anyway. The first general store at Woy Woy, apart from the temporary ones in vogue during the construction of the railway, was opened by W. Burns of Gosford about 1895. From Ellis being in charge, bread and groceries were brought from Burns' store in Gosford, afterwards occupied by Fred Cox and Chapman's, respectively. That was just a newspaper clipping mentioning the W. Burns. So Burns Park is a heritage-listed park in Gosford, New South Wales, that connects the train station to a mixed-use development site. The park's most notable feature is a stone gateway arch, which dates back to the 1930s when the park was established. And these are the sandstone pillars and fenceway, and there's also a fountain in the park. So a water fountain was commissioned in 1963 by Gosford Rotary as a memorial to all who had fought for peace. Sculptor Gerard Lewis was invited to create the fountain, including the organic-shaped copper scoop. His painter wife, Margot Lewis, was invited to design the pool and wall mosaic. The back of the feature wall is made of grey sandstone, with staggered steps to provide a pattern of water cascades. So there's the fountain in use. And the inscription there is saying the Rotary War Memorial Fountain, opened by Mrs. C.C. Margin, the gift of grateful donors as a symbol to those who died in their efforts to achieve lasting peace, goodwill to all men. Art McLaughlin, President, 1962-63. This public artwork was commissioned by Gosford Rotary as a war memorial fountain. The sculptor, Gerard Lewis, died in 1962, and the artwork was completed by his wife, Margot Lewis, in 1963. So a little bit about these people. Lewis studied at Central Coast of Arts and Craft, London in 1934 and 1935. Margot became an accomplished artist and successful designer in her own right. So they were both artists, and Gerald, had a tragic accident while they were in Queensland. He was thrown from a horse while helping a friend muster cattle on his property and fractured his skull. He died of a brain hemorrhage on the 9th of August 1962 at Cairns, before his time at only age 58. Yeah. So Margot continued to create and exhibit work up until her death in February 1978. She received one major retrospective, and her work is collected by major Australian galleries. She was the subject of a winning Archibald Prize portrait in 1967 by Judy Cassab. So, yeah, during the water restrictions, the fountain sat dry because it was turned off and there was no water for quite a few years. And the site of the dry fountains, both Burns Park and Kibble Park, is a source of frustration to residents. The fountains also collect rubbish and are reminders of the town's lack of water. That was stated in the Gosford CBD Heritage Interpretation Strategy 2019. So, yeah, the Kibble Park fountain has actually been totally removed now, so that fountain never ran again, but the fountain here at Burns Park actually got turned back on and the water is flowing there again, which is nice to see. So the sandstone archway has inscribed on it, Burns Place, Gosford, Garden City by the Waters. So I'm sure this was done later, not in like the 1930s, which is when the arch was said to be built. You can see the fountain in the background is there. So yeah. In the late 1970s, the park's stone pillars and archway were vandalised, with wiring needing to be replaced. Now, I'm not sure what the wiring was for, perhaps lights. There are 2 old lampposts in the park, and I don't think they're in use, but there must be other lighting that lights the park. And I don't know what impact the vandalism had, but they must have fixed it. So Burns Place Park is currently underutilised by the public, largely because it is uninviting and unsafe at night. The seat of recommended interpretation is designed to encourage use of the park during the day and make it a safe space at night. The park also has a suite of trees that are on the Gosford Significant Tree Register, including the spotted gum, Kaffir lime, cabbage tree palm, broad-leaved paperbark melaleuca, date palm phoenix, and deciduous cypress. So this is just a video that I took. That's the station. I need to acknowledge the heroes of war. You can see Burns Place with the phoenix palm trees. Okay. The fountain, and there's also an overpass walkway from the station over Burns Park across the road to Gateway Centre. It was built around the 1980s, and this is a picture of it back then when it looks fairly new, and Gateway had shopping centre attractions and commercialized use. It's still used today, but it's by other businesses, not so much shopping, but companies and services, community services, and these shops are no longer there. That's empty, so they're gone. And that's a picture I took of it. The bench seating, which is still there. This seating is all over Gosford, and it shows, the emblem of, I think it's the ship Endeavour, and this would have been around the 1988 bicentenary that a lot of things were celebrated for the bicentennial year. They're still all around the Gosford area. This is Man Street, picture of the main road, and the park on this side with the toilet block and information centre, and Gateway is over here. Yeah, these are other pictures I took. This is the stairway up to Gateway where the overhead pass meets, and you can see in the reflection there is Burns Park, the overpass, the archway, and this was a man, a homeless man, who used to walk from one end of Gosford to the other with his shopping trolley, and he was very much seen and known in the community, and he liked to just mind his own business and read books, and that was his life. And he's since passed now, which the community were actually quite sad about. I think he had a lot of people that actually cared and kind of looked out for him. There's a lot of homeless people in Gosford, and they're not all the same. But yeah, there is a community spirit that actually care and look after these people. And there he is again. The walkway overpass, the archway, fountain, phoenix tree. Yep. Yeah. Sometimes I don't know who it is, but there's like installations and things around Gosford. There's a lot of creativity and arts people that put these things around, and that was one a few years ago. That was in Burns Park in front of the fountain. So, okay, the future of Burns Park, there are restoration plans seeking to restore, where is it? There is an application proposal to demolish, repair and refurbish deteriorating structures to improve public safety and maintain heritage significance identified in the park's conservation management plan. It is a small but important green space in Gosford between the railway station, bus interchange and Gateway Centre shops and offices on the opposite side of Mann Street. Burns Park is of high social significance as it was funded by the local community as a place of public open space. It's listed as having local and state heritage significance under Schedule 9 of the State Environmental Planning Policy. So the main feature is the archway, and then other features are the pillars, the trees. Plans are to remove 2 European ash trees whose invasive root system has caused substantial damage to the sandstone garden. Okay, damage to the retaining walls is widespread. Stone pillars at the northern entry is also dismantled and reconstructed. The stone stairs will be repaired and new handrails installed. Yeah. So yeah, it looks like they want to improve the park there, keeping the heritage, but making it just updated and safe. So that's a good thing. Other improvements could include removal of bollard lights, replacement post-top lighting, removal of shrubs. Yeah. Okay. Suggested that the removal of the suspended walkway bridge over Mann Street would increase the view corridors up and down Mann Street and assist in restoring the original design aesthetic of the park. Okay, so this is a development plan, Barker, Ryan Stewart and ADG Architects are assisting Jare Pty Ltd on the relevant sub-consultants with the preparation of an environmental impact statement for a state-significant development application. The proposal will involve the construction of a mixed-use redevelopment of Gosford Gateway Centre. So here is Burns Park, the train station. This is Gateway Centre, but it looks like they want to totally transform that. It doesn't look like the walkway is there. The existing building looks like it's removed, and these other ones built with a public like green space plaza square. And here's an artist's impression of it. The project brief is to accommodate a number of complementary functions on site, including a hotel, commercial offices, retail areas, an educational and entertainment component, student accommodation, retirement, independent living units, and a health services precinct, producing a vibrant area that provides a clear public benefit in the provision of a generous, activated public plaza and links through the site. Concept has a public plaza in the middle, connecting to the existing green space at Burns Place and Gosford Station. The existing Man Street pedestrian overpass connecting the site to Burns Park and Gosford train station will be demolished, and a new upgrade pedestrian crossing will be installed to activate the street level. 3 mixed-use towers will be located on the site. So that looks like what they have planned for the future. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I will see you again soon.